Interiors on cars these days are dingy, depressing, and quite frankly, boring places to be. In this video, we're going to be addressing that problem on my VW Caddy, which in the back we've been using for valeting for years now, and it got a little bit out of hand. But it doesn't look quite like this anymore. And that's because in the last few videos, we've spent time stripping out the back of the van and removing all of the old ply and a bunch of other stuff to make way for a new interior. So in this video, we're going to be transforming this empty shell of a van into something much more bougie. So let's crack on. My game plan in this video is to make the van feel much more luxurious and comfortable than it does at the moment. So the first stage of that is insulating it as best as possible, but there's a few little bits we need to do before that. In previous videos, we have already stripped everything out of the back, leaving a few final pieces to remove before we can start work on the Caddy. So the back of the van is now completely stripped, and what we're going to be doing before we put in new ply is try and make it as comfortable and as usable as possible in there by insulating everything, not only for sound but also for heat. And to do that, we've got these sheets of Dodo mat, which is essentially a stick-on insulation, which we're going to be putting all over the interior of the van, on the floor, on the ceiling, on the walls, on the outside, underneath, everywhere. But before we can stick it on, we need to clean everything thoroughly to make sure it's going to stick properly, and then we can get on with sticking that on. After a thorough clean down on the surfaces in the back of the van, it was ready for the new insulation to be put in place. You may have already noticed that there was some of this already in the van which we have removed, but they only used a small amount, whereas we're going to be covering every single surface that's worth covering. Phenomenal! One down, 84 more to go. So we apply this by heating each sheet up to make sure the adhesive sticks properly, and then massaging it into the contours of the van. The idea of this is it stops metal panels vibrating and booming whilst you're driving along, which is going to create a lot of road noise. Alongside that, it's also going to help with heat retention in the van, keeping it a lot warmer in the winter months. You may remember I also did this on my 350Z because of excessive exhaust and road noise coming from the boot, and it actually really helped with that too. After a few hours of applying piece after piece and even some help from the dog, we finally managed to get the job done. And there we have one fully insulated van, well, with the sound deadening stuff anyway. We've done all the floor, the arches, the second skin kind of on the walls, the ceiling, everywhere we can, including the doors at the back. And I think chances of getting phone signal in here now are absolutely zero, but hopefully it's going to be much quieter and much more pleasant to be in. I have got a new ply kit for the van, so we don't have to put that old dirty, horrible, smelly plywood back in. But I don't want to put it straight in straight away because I want to trim it all and make it look as good as it can before I fit it to the van. The next job in the back of the van is the headlining, and I was originally going to reuse what we've got here, but instead I'm going to make it a little bit better by bringing the whole thing slightly forward to cover up all of these holes. So to do that, we've got to make a new one. I've now decided that we're going to run the van without the bulkhead. I felt it just made it a much nicer place to be and also gave more room in the cabin, especially for the passenger. So that means that the old headlining was going to look a bit ugly because there was quite a few cutouts for the bulkhead. So we traced out the old bulkhead onto a piece of plywood and made the changes where they needed to be made and started cutting it out. Once all the holes were drilled, we could do a bit of cleanup and then a quick test fit to make sure that our work was good. And as you can see, where the bulkhead was, we now have a much nicer clean looking edge. Next up was the rest of the ply lining. I actually bought a full kit
for this, but unfortunately it was all absolutely rubbish. The panels were so far off size wise, we literally needed to make a whole new kit out of the kit that had been sent out. Luckily all these panels were oversized, so we managed to save every piece we needed from the kit that was sent.
Most vans typically are carpet lined or done with something pretty durable, which is good if you are using it as a work van, but I don't think I'm going to be, to be honest with you, so I want this to feel as plush as possible. So what I've bought is 11 metres of foam backed 4-way stretch Alcantara, so hopefully this is going to give a real nice feeling and add that next level of luxury and also a little bit of sound deadening possibly to the back of the van.
I wanted to start with the headline on this because I've got something special planned for it, so we lay it down on the fabric and then cut a piece to size.
I turn my promises into lies, glow until the morning light, falling in.
Then spraying a liberal amount of contact adhesive over the fabric and the plywood and then just sticking it straight down. Once I was happy that was stuck, I could then start looking at the edges, just stretching it over the edge slightly with a little bit of extra contact adhesive, just to make sure those edges are stuck down properly.
How much better does that look? The Alcantara just gives a next level of luxury compared to plywood or normal carpet. It looks 10 out of 10. I've just flipped it upside down to put pressure on the edges to make sure they stick properly, but yeah, I'm super happy with that. Like I said at the start of the video, I want to try and make this interior something special, so I'm going to be doing something to this headliner which you all the subscribers might have seen before.
I've lost the audio on this clip, so you'll have to excuse the voiceover, but what we're doing is a starlight headliner, the same as what we did on the 350Z, or you may have also seen something quite similar to this in a Rolls-Royce too. We start by turning the headliner over to reveal the back of it and marking out a centre spot on here. Then we can separate the headliner into 4 pieces. This makes the job a lot easier.
I found the easiest way of doing this is splitting it into sections so you can keep track of exactly where you are. I know we've got 150 individual lights that we need to fit to this headliner, so splitting it down makes it easier to keep track of exactly where you are. So I'm going to do 37.5 dots on the back of each of these sections to make sure that I keep that nice and even across the whole headliner.
I then scatter a load of dots quite evenly across each quarter of the headliner. That way I know that I've got good coverage and there's not going to be a spot that's missing lights that's quite obvious. Then using a small drill bit, I drill 10 holes at a time, so it's quite easy then to keep track of exactly how many I've done, because trust me, once you've done 150 it's very easy to lose 1 or 2. Once those holes are drilled, you can start fitting some of the fibres, so you thread these through and then using a hot glue gun just to stick down the back. It doesn't matter how far through you poke it because you're going to cut it later.
Keep trying again.
And once the first 10 are done, it's just a case of repeating it another 14 times until all 150 holes are filled. This is not a quick job, and also it can be quite frustrating if it does go wrong, which by putting Alcantara on the surface first definitely makes it harder, as I did find out because I did snag the material quite badly, as we'll see later in the video.
There is now 150 individual lights glued into the headliner. I haven't turned it over yet, and I know it's not going to be perfect, which I'm a little bit disappointed about, because the drill seems to have snagged some of the fabric and pulled it back through, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know how bad it is yet. I know there's one bit which pulled quite badly and I'm going to need to do a bodge on some of the material, but I'm hoping the rest of it's going to be okay. But yeah, let's turn it over and have a look.
When all they have to say to be okay is
Right, next thing to do is to trim back all of the loose ends, which obviously come through when you push the fibres through. Once they're trimmed back, we can then take a look at how it's going to look when it's turned on.
Using nail clippers, you just trim those fibres back just as close as you can to the headline to give the cleanest finish possible, and then you can plug it in and admire all your hard work.
Yeah! It's not looking too bad. As soon as it's in the dark and the lights are coming off it, you don't notice the damaged areas. I'm not gonna lie, I am beating myself up a little bit about where the fabric's pulled and stuff. I wouldn't say it's my finest work, but it's definitely passable for now, and if I do want to redo it in the future, then I still can.
Now it's time to trim the van and really transform it from a work van into something a bit more luxurious. The first step to this is covering over any exposed holes on the body of the van. The reason being for this is because once you stick fabric to this, over time dirt will pass through those holes and you'll get dirty patches on the material.
There we have every hole in the back of the van taped up, so now we can start looking at doing some trimming.
I thought it'd be the best idea to start with the biggest side, which is the driver's side without the sliding door. So I measured it, I think it worked out to about 2.1 metres of material needed to do this side, and then using a jump lead to clamp it in place at the top, I could start sticking it down. The process is the same as how we did the headlining, it's just using that contact adhesive, spraying both the fabric and the surface you're sticking it to, and working your way around the whole thing, stretching it into all the contours of the van. This is definitely one of those jobs that would be easier with two people, but with a bit of ingenuity and a bit of practice, I managed to get it done on my own. But this Alcantara, even though it is stretchy, I think there is easier products to work with on the market, but obviously if you want a nice finish like this material gives you, I think this is definitely the best way to go. After lots of sticking and lots of stretching, I've pretty much got the driver's side in place now, and I'm not going to lie, this time lapse makes it look very quick, but this probably took me about an hour and a half to 2 hours to get this side done. The final thing to do is then to lose the edge on the door shut, so I remove the seal from the door shut on the back and then get it as tight as I can to it and then refit the door shut, and it's good to go on that side. One side down, one to go. This side was definitely easier, probably half because I'd practiced on the other side, but also because there was a lot less surface area to do because of the sliding door. On both sides I did have to do a relief cut around the rear door, kind of where the wheel arch liner meets the body of the van at a right angle, because it was just no way I was going to get a nice finish on this, but you don't really see it, it's not really a massive problem at all. As I did on the back door, I had to do the same on the sliding door, so removing the seal and getting as tight to the edge as possible and then refitting the seal over the fabric.
The back of the van is looking a hell of a load better, so I've already managed to trim the sides and up the top here. Not managed to fit the headlining yet, and I've not managed to fit the side paneling. I feel a bit daft really, because I've actually managed to get this okay. I kind of thought I wouldn't be able to get this looking as good as I have, but I have left the side paneling out here and not insulated it yet. So what I've got to do, unfortunately, is actually cut out the sections where the standard ply would go, and then fit the insulation and then also the panel, because obviously it's quite baggy at the moment, and I think we can tidy it up a little bit still.
This felt so backwards doing it this way, but I didn't think I'd be able to get as nice a finish as I did manage to get just sticking it straight on, so I thought having a panel which I could cut out and lose some creases in might be quite helpful, and then re-trimming a panel and sticking it in place. I thought this was the best way, but apparently not. Anyway, so I had to trim out some of the material which I'd just stuck down, and then it was time to trim up the other panel and get that stuck in place with some insulation underneath.
Before I trim up the new side panelling pieces, I'm going to fit a bunch of these invisible trim clips which essentially go on before the panel is trimmed, meaning that obviously they can't be seen once the panel's fitted, so it looks a lot neater.
These invisible trim clips are not the most fun thing in the world to work with. Essentially what you have to do is twist them into place, and they're not 100% reliable, but I think when they work, they do work well, but it's just about making sure you get it right. Then it was exactly the same process as we used on the headlining, sticking both sides, the wood and also the fabric, and then trimming it into place.
No more, there's nothing left to ensure.
Then using this thermal fleece, I stuffed all the cavities I could get it into and then tried to fit the new trim panel.
Well, that's a stupid mistake. I've trimmed it the wrong way around. Time for a sketchy redo.
Once I'd peeled off all my hard work and turned all the trim clips around and then retrimmed it, I could then simply push that panel into place. Then exactly the same on the other side. Luckily this panel's a lot smaller, and then we can start doing all of the door panels. The final piece was the top panel on the sliding door. As we'd already put that insulation on there, I wanted to cover that up and make it look as nice as possible, so I just stuck some fabric directly to it and tucked it into the edges. Then it was time for the panel that I've been waiting for, the headlining. All I had to do was fit those trim clips. You can twist these in after the fabric has been fitted, but it's definitely not as easy, as that's what I was doing here. But anyway, once those were in, it was then ready to be fitted to the van.
So the back of the van is now starting to look a bit more complete, but the headlining needs to go in now. And obviously earlier we managed to fit that starlight headlining, but now I need to wire that up. And I want that to work off this centre light just here. So when the doors open, it comes on, or when you turn that on, then they're on all the time. So I don't want them to be going, you know, non-stop. Luckily, I've had lights wired to this before, so I've got the wires exposed, so all we need to do is now wire in the light for that, and then I think tuck the module for it up there, and then we can look at fitting the starlight headlining.
This was really simple. All I had to do was splice off those two wires and then extend the wire in so I could tuck that module in that top corner, so it's out of the way and not in the way of the headlining.
Don't doubt my eyes.
There is also a cavity above the headlining too, so we had some of that thermal fleecing left over, so using some contact adhesive, I just stuck that into place to give that last final layer of insulation in the back of the van.
Got a rebel soul. I've got a rebel soul. I've got a rebel soul.
Once that was done, it was then time for that final piece, that starlight headlining, to go into place. So with some help from Liam and Matt, we pushed that into place. Using those invisible trim clips, it definitely wasn't the easiest, and we had to do some funky moves to try and get this to clip in. It definitely did not want to play ball straight away. After we'd fought with the headlining for a bit, we managed to get some of the clips to go into place, and slowly but surely they did start to go in. Some of them took a bit of force, some of them took a bit of jiggling, and some of them took a bit of repositioning, but eventually we got to the point where it'd stay up on its own. After a bit more brute force to get some of those last clips into place, we could then plug in the starlight headliner to see how it looks, but the boys weren't so confident the headlining was going to stay up.
This ceiling's coming down.
Yeah. You can drive, and it, honestly,
One bit will come down, and the weight of that will bring the rest of it down.
gonna plug it in, honestly, it's working.
Whoopay!
Oh, very good.
The back of the van is looking undeniably better than when we started, most definitely. But there's one final piece that we need to do to finish off this interior for this video. And that is getting down some carpet on the floor. I've been to my local carpet shop and picked up this offcut which is going to fit. I did actually want black, but this is all I had. And seeing as it's something that I intend on replacing quite regularly, it will definitely do the job. safe to say my attempt's poor. I've never fitted a full carpet before in my life, so I'm going to leave this to a pro and get this sorted in between this video and the next video, but you get the idea.
And you wouldn't believe the difference that all of this has made. The van is so much more sound deadened now, and it feels so much more like a car than it does a van when you're driving it. There's so much less road noise, and it's just so much more pleasant to be in. It's so cosy, in fact, I've managed to record the whole voiceover for this video in the back of this van. Make sure you subscribe. See you next time. Bye. Can you let me out now? Can I get it out? Help. Help. Hey!